Hey fellow nerds and geeks and fans of indie pop culture creators, Aaron Nabus here, and welcome to the Hall 8 Show. On this episode, we welcome back the mastermind behind Monster Matador, Stephen Prince. We last had him on, I think it was episode 64, which was recorded at WonderCon 2019, and it also featured his good friend, Ryland Grant. Monster Matador just recently started a Kickstarter campaign for the third and final issue of the Monster Matador Tango of the Matadors arc, which the Kickstarter campaign ends on, I believe, May 5th, 2021. Welcome back to the show, Stephen.
Thanks, Aaron. Happy to be here and catch up. So I can't it's been 2 years. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, a lot has happened since the last time we had you on. Luckily, no giant monsters have added to our plight in real life, though I think the last time when we had you on, you did say monsters in your book were, I guess, sort of metaphors for Republicans. How have you been?
Did I say that? Yeah, maybe. I mean, it works, I guess. You know, I've been good. I've been good. I've been busy. Obviously, a lot's changed with the book too. We have a plus all-star artist now who replaced me, and we're much better for it. Fabio Alves, who was Ringo Award nominated for his cover work on Banjax. On Banjax. Mm-hmm. And he's worked with, as he said, our friend Ryland Grant. He has the Monster Matador Kickstarter right now, and he also has a Kickstarter for his book with Ryland called The Jump. So he's been busy. We've been keeping him busy.
Yeah, I think before we started the podcast, we chatted for a little bit, and you sort of told me that that Fabio's in Brazil, mm-hmm. and he contracted the COVID virus.
Yeah, he got the vid. That was a scary little patch there, but he's recovered. He's doing well. So it's scary times, especially for anyone anywhere. But as indie creators, a lot of us work wide distances from each other, and sometimes it's difficult. You kind of lose contact for a bit, and you're not sure why. But fortunately, he's doing better, and he's actually he's drawing more Monster Matador right now, and we're very happy that both Ryland and I are very happy he's recovered. So it's definitely it brings it close to home, Mm-hmm. And I'm sure we're not the only ones that have been dealing with that on a creative level in our little indie comics world.
Definitely. In addition to Fabio Alves, you also have colorist Alex Zeef. Is that how you say that person's name?
Okay, so I just learned, because I haven't. We talk. She's in Mexico. We talk via email and Messenger all the time, and it's Zeef.
Zeef.
So I used to say Zeef.
Now, how did you find this colorist?
So Alex, I found her. So I was struggling. Fabio was not the original artist for this book. The original artist, it fell through because our schedules couldn't align. Then I had a lot of trouble finding an artist, and Fabio had just finished up, I think, the first issue of The Jump. And I was talking to Ryland and kind of crying that I couldn't find anyone. And he's like, "Oh, well, Fabio's about to start looking for work. Why don't you talk to him?" And so obviously Fabio agreed to do the book. And one of the things with Fabio is that he's a really difficult artist to color. He uses sometimes a very high contrast black and white style.
Yeah,
He's very
that's pretty
influential.
evident in the work
Yeah,
or in the comic book.
yeah, he's very influenced by artists like Mike Mignola, Bill Sienkiewicz, people of that sort. And it's interesting when you look at the black and white. All the information is there, and it's interesting how your eye and your brain actually fills in a lot of like the details. Yeah, and but what happens is when you color that, you actually have to have an understanding of structure, because like of like muscle structure, facial structure, because a lot of that is implied in the art sometimes. And so when I was looking for a colorist, I was looking for someone um, who I felt would be able to do that. And I was looking on all over the place, all the usual places, Deviant Art, Facebook, Instagram, and Alex is a friend of a friend of an artist, Sergio Rios, who did some Monster Matador covers. He's a Mexico-based artist, and so I kind of caught Alex's work through that. And one of the things I noticed on her page was she had done sculptures. So I thought that she would be perfect for that. She has a really interesting palette. It's not. It took Fabio a little getting used to, also because he's not used to having his art colors this way. But she has a very bright and bold and expressive palette,
Hmm.
and it really makes Monster Matador. If you look at the book, it has a pretty unique color palette for the kind of book it is. It doesn't really look like anything else. She uses a lot of really strong colors, a lot of bold colors, and a lot of interesting color choices. So it's a really unique looking book, and the two of them have gotten now. They're kind of used to each other, and they're just doing. By the time you get to issue 3, the work that they're doing together, it's like they're like a unit now. You know what I mean? It's really beautiful stuff.
Yeah, you would expect a lot of like post apocalyptic stuff has a lot of a more saturated color to it, but I think with Fabio's art, you said uses a lot of high contrast influences. I think the extra pop and vividness that Alex uses does accentuate his artwork a lot. I think.
Yeah, and Fabio, and like I said, Fabio's he's used to having a more saturated look on his work.
Hmm.
Uh, but I didn't really want that for this book necessarily. I kind of wanted to differentiate it, a little bit. And I didn't, I so I didn't want it to look like a typical post-apocalyptic book, which they tend to use a lot of browns and oranges and things
Exactly.
like that.
Yeah.
So and she just has such. If you see her other work, she has an Instagram page, Facebook page. Just look up Alex ZIEF. But she just uses really interesting color combinations. It's really really great.
Yeah, I love the cover for issue number 3. It's really like just it's like almost it's pretty much perfect. It's in your face. It's like bold and strong, and it's like I don't want
Yeah,
to mess with this guy.
yeah, yeah. She uses like there's these nighttime scenes, and the sky is this like purplish blue, and it's just like makes everything pop. Just
Yeah.
gives it such a creates a really interesting atmosphere to it. But yeah,
Yeah, I think you have a couple of blurbs here concerning Monster Matador. The first one's from Ryland Grant. He says, Matador has for years been my absolute favorite comic out there. It plays like Danny McBride and Jody Hill made a Santo movie and then gleefully peed on it. It's completely and utterly bonkers, so goddamn smart and funny. I honestly can't recommend it enough. And then David Pepos says, an off the wall, over the top, and totally insane monster mashup. Take the kaiju by the horns and order Monster Matador today. Obviously, it's born from your love of Mad Max, kaiju, and Santo, and I guess telenovelas. But can you tell me more about the main character, Ramon Alejandro Estevez and Guerrero, the Monster Matador? And
It's a mouthful.
yeah, is he partially also based on anyone in real life?
So there's an old Peter Sellers movie that's not so well known, but it's called The Bobo. And in this movie, Peter Sellers plays Juan Bautista, and he's the greatest singing matador in all of Spain. And he plays the character, I mean, it's a matador, and he plays him very seriously. And, I am Juan Bautista, the greatest singing matador in all of Spain.
Hmm.
And I always loved the iconography of the matador, and there's a little bit of that character in Ramon. Obviously, this isn't a comedy that I'm doing, but some of like the poise, I kind of have that voice in my head sometimes. But he's a little bit, Antonio Banderas. Um, I really, as I started drawing it, there's an actor who started to come out who I've really kind of liked as a model for the Matador, who is Gabriel Luna.
Oh yeah.
He was in the last. I saw there was a picture of him online, and he had the mustache, and his hair was all kind of like mussed up and curly and a little longer, and I was like, oh my God, like there he is, that's the guy. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of influences to it, but um, a little bit of like those old like Zorro movies and things like that. But if you watch like those telenovelas, they're very melodramatic.
Yeah.
And part of the thing, like with Peter Sellers and the way he kind of approached roles is like, even though he was like the crazy character in the movie from the audience's point of view, he always played his characters very seriously while the world around him was going to hell. And from the character's point of view, they were the crazy ones. So, with the Matador, he's like always kind of very serious, despite the fact that like this world around him has literally gone to hell,
Yeah.
and he never loses his focus. He never loses his like, his swagger or his determination. He never lets like all those outside things affect him. So it creates this like interesting, almost sometimes melodramatic contrast, to what's going on in the story, which makes it a lot of fun when he interacts with a lot of characters because um, he's very focused.
Yeah. I guess the other characters definitely provide a contrast to his like his stoicism.
Yeah, yeah. Stoicism. There you go. That's a good word.
um, how long ago did the idea of Monster Matador pop into your head, and what made you decide to actually say, "I have to create this"? And also, could you also please touch on the importance of, I guess, Jim Higgins' class at Meltdown Comics?
Oh yeah, of course. So the idea came to me. I mean, this is how long sometimes, and for any people interested in process or how the idea is probably 14, 15 years ago. Okay, I was just sitting around and kind of like I had a roommate who was an artist, and she was kind of encouraging me to kind of draw again, and I was kind of getting her into comics, and I was just sitting around, just kind of like, oh, I'm going to create a character that's going to be like, Batman or Superman or whatever. I don't know, one of those crazy little things you tell yourself, and I was just the name just popped into my head, and I started drawing, and I was kind of I was at that time I was really into like the iconography of matadors. I mean, I still am obviously, but it's just something I've always been attracted to. And the name Monster Matador popped into my head, and I was like, "Damn, that's a really cool name,"
It is.
And I just like sketched out the character, the mustache and everything, and my roommate kind of encouraged me to do a little, to draw a story, and I did like this little 8-page thing, which is pretty terrible. The original concept for it was kind of I want to say Three Stooges influenced because I think I was watching a lot of Three Stooges at the time. So it was more of a slapstick comedy where he'd fight the monster and the monster would go wow wow wow, or something like. And it was really dumb, Uh, but I had his daughter in there, and there was something to it, and the idea was always kind of in the back of my head, and then she kind of kept prodding me to do something with it, and I did this. That's when I think around when Jim started his classes at Meltdown, and I took a creating comics class, and I don't remember if I started the comic before or after, but I drew this monster. It was Monster Matador versus El Toro de Tres Cabezas, the bull with three heads. And I'm a huge Alejandro Jodorowsky fan. And the villain in this piece was not only the bull, but a mysterious monster fighter called El Esteban, who looked like the Jodorowsky character of El Topo. I don't know why I called him the Steve, but it is what it is, right?
Yep.
Anyway, it took like 3 years to do like 20 pages, which is ridiculous, and it was really just for fun, and I think around that time, I think Comixology started coming out and was coming out, and people there was a big kind of like do it yourself kind of movement popping up, indie books and all that stuff. And I was taking Jim's class, and I used to work in the toy industry, and I got laid off, and I had nothing to do, so I thought, well, I'll start making comics. And I really wanted to do Monster Matador. This was maybe around 2011, 2012, but I didn't really feel like my art skills were up to it. And at the time, it wasn't finding artists and things like that was not as like I don't want to say simple, but it wasn't as I don't know. It was a little different. But anyway, I started drawing. I did this comic strip called Unemployant, which is about Eddie Antley, who's an ant and who gets laid off from his job and kind of follows his adventures. And then I drew, for some ungodly reason, a 200 plus page science fiction graphic novel called The Third, because when you're unemployed and you've got nothing to do, that's what you do. And after that, I thought, I can probably do this Matador thing. But and the idea was, for me, like I was kind of interested in, a lot of the comics I grew up in, a lot of like, also the older stuff, like, the Claremont and Byrne X-Men, or going back to like, Kirby and Stanley. One of the things I love about those old series is that if you start from the beginning, it's really like raw. You know what I mean? They have the concept, but it's not quite like what you've come to know as like, the Uncanny X-Men or the Fantastic Four. You know what I mean? Like, they're kind of figuring it out on the page month to month, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to do that with Monster Matador, but I also like, because it's indie comics and whatnot, it's like I didn't want to like start paying an artist to do that, because it's like I if I was gonna start paying an artist or whatever, I want the work to be what it's gonna be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I thought, I'll do a couple issues, and I'll kind of like get my feet wet, and I'll kind of the character will kind of grow and become like what it is, and I'll figure it out on the page. And I figured I'd do like a few issues, and I wound up doing 12 issues because, again, I'm an idiot. Like 300 pages worth of Monster Matador. But it was cool. It was cool to kind of like, because a lot of it too is when I started it, the stories were very simple, because I just I used, I think, like a 6-panel grid, and the stories were very simple because when I did that sci-fi graphic novel, I bit off way more than I could chew. So I was like, with Monster Matador, let me start out simple, and then I'll let it get more complex as it goes along, so that my drawing can catch up to it. So I did 12 issues of that, and then I was like, okay, I'm ready. Let's do it. And then I wrote Tango the Matadors, and Tango the Matadors is essentially, it's essentially the first issue of Monster Matador. You could read what came before, or you don't have to read what came before. It really doesn't matter. And we're also going to do in the near future a story called Monster Matador: The Beginning, which will kind of which will tell his origin and all that other stuff anyway. So for all intents, Monster Matador, Tango the Matadors is a relaunch of the book. And one of the reasons why I did it, have him with another Matador, was to kind of show what kind of character he is, to contrast him against another Matador who's kind of like different. So you get to see what kind of person Ramon is, without like tons of exposition and stuff like that. So
Yeah. I guess he's sort of Ramon is sort of like Captain America, and the other Matador is sort of like the new Captain America.
yeah. That's right. Always ahead of the curve.
That's right. Yeah. What's it like now that I guess you sort of you obviously you started off handling both the writing and illustration responsibilities. What is it like now, sort of, doing the writing and the concept creating and handing off the illustration responsibilities to somebody else?
It's a lot easier. Um, it's great because I don't have to like like these scripts are like I know I can throw the craziest in there, and I know Fabio's gonna pull it off amazingly.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell these more kind of complex and dramatic stories. And it's actually it's been a great experience working with him because Fabio is really he's a professional artist, and he really takes his craft very seriously, and he's a really good storyteller. And we work closely. I give him full scripts, but I also give him the freedom and the flexibility to tell the story in a way that he feels um, is clear. And he'll sometimes.
So being that you're both a writer and artist, I guess you only give him scripts, but you don't give him thumbnails.
I don't give him thumbnails, and one of the things that if you've ever done a comic, and one of the things I've learned is that you can have a great script, perfectly written, boom. Then you go to thumbnails, and as you start the thumbnail stuff down, things change because now you're kind of telling the story visually.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you find like, oh, I don't really need that panel there, or maybe I do need a different panel here, or maybe I can do something that's a little more visually interesting than what's written. And then when you actually draw the thing on 11 by 17, those thumbnails can change again because now you're seeing it in a totally different way. So it's what's nice is that sometimes writers get very protective of their words and their script, and they go, no, you do not change a thing. But having had the experience of an artist, I kind of understand where they're coming from, I guess. And if you look at like in the first issue, so the reader is introduced to the Matador, and the Matador is being carried by the monster, the Volagante, and it's being carried over these ruins, these in Guatemala, and the Matador's hands are kind of tied behind his back with a resin that the Volagante kind of handcuffed him with. And that wasn't in the original script. That was something Fabio added. In the original script, the Matador's hands were free, and he was kind of punching
Hmm.
the Volagante, and which worked fine. But Fabio's little change there actually, I think, like worked better because it added a bit of mystery to it. And then he had this cool panel with the Matador breaking free from the resin from these handcuffs, which again was a great little moment, and just showing the reader just kind of like the strength and the intensity of this character. So there are little touches like that where he'll kind of do things like that. So it's been really fun to have a collaboration like that where you're on the same wavelength and where you can trust your artist, and their ideas, the ideas that they bring to the table. With indie comics, when you're doing long form storytelling like this, you want to have a consistency. And one of the nice things about Fabio is he's reliable. He's incredibly talented, and he's a great collaborator. He brings good ideas to the table. So
I guess without giving away too much, could you tell our audience a bit about the events leading up to issue 3?
yes, so I don't want to give away too much, but the Matador is there's a monster called the Volagante that is attacking the Caribbean side of Guatemala, and we focus our story on the residents of a city, Puerto Barrios, who have been fighting this monster, and because it's like this giant fly, she also has thousands of children, so they not only have to deal with this giant monster, but also with all these almost like person-sized like fly monsters attacking them as well. And they sort of the Matador has come to their city to help them fight off this monster, and then another Matador arrives, who it turns out um, is an old friend of Ramon's, and uh, heard of this monster Matador that was fighting monsters, and he decided that he too was going to fight monsters. And as the story goes along, they mount kind of a final battle, and the groups sort of split off. The residents stay and defend the city from the Volagante's children, and the Matadors go off to fight the Volagante. And there's death, destruction, betrayal, uh, drama. It's got a bit of there's a little love story happening in there. It's got a lot of everything, and there's a big twist at the end of issue 2 that lead that our tagline for issue 3 is only one Matador will survive. So
Right.
there can be only one, because I love Highlander. So
Yeah, I kind of thought of Highlander when I saw you put that
yeah,
in there.
yeah.
Although I'm interested to see what will happen when Ramon finds out that his daughter is sort of being trained to be a
Yes,
matador.
yes. So so this is kind of like a subplot in this that we're gonna it's gonna come to a head, because Ramon is he's fighting the monsters to make a better world for his daughter, and and we'll find out a lot about Ramon as the story goes on, and his past. And in Spanish, Matador means killer. Okay, so the name of the book is like Monster Killer, right? And essentially, Ramon knows what he is, and he knows that he's a killer. He's not a bad person, and he has a big heart and all that. But at his core, he knows that what he does and what he is he's a killer, and he doesn't want that life for his daughter. He comes from a very hard background. He was an orphan. He was abandoned. There's a lot of like pain in his past, and he doesn't want to pass that to his child. And that's a story that's going to come to a head, and we're going to see how that plays out. He's going to be he's going to be there's a I'm actually writing it right now. We're calling it the Once Upon Some Monsters in Mexico trilogy, and we're going to see what comes out of that. So that to me, that's kind of like the core of the stories, that relationship with him and his daughter, but also kind of like the things that we pass on to our children,
Right.
and how circular life is generationally, and how we're sometimes not aware of the things we pass down, or how we pass them down, and how we struggle to sort of break those circles and move forward. So it gets kind of deep, I guess. But
Definitely. I guess, if you think about it, even though I guess Monster Matador has had such a long journey to get to
Mhm.
this point, I think because you're a father now. I mean, if you
Yeah.
would have decided to sort of get to that next level of Monster Matador before you had kids, the story could have turned out differently, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely so. It's interesting because when I first started it, um, I had her traveling with him, and that was sort of on on purpose, because he was there to protect her and whatnot. And she has an uncle that she stays with. And then I had kids, and even though like before I had kids, it was like, yeah, this is kind of reckless, but he's the hero of the book. He's the whatever. And then I had kids. I was like, yeah, this is pretty, this is really reckless. So I kind of like wrote it, uh, where he gets into this big fight with his brother-in-law, and his brother-in-law is like, you're reckless, you're going to get her killed, and like how you're saying you want to like protect her, but you're bringing him into this life of violence day in and day out just by her being with you. And so he goes off by himself, and that's where Tango of the Matadors sort of picks up from. um, and so that's why it's kind of like it really is just kind of like the beginning of the story. You can start there, where we start with, again, you meet Ramon, he's fighting the monsters, and then we have the subplot with the daughter, and all of that is kind of like leading to him going back to Mexico,
Hmm.
and the consequences of that. So, but yeah, it does. I mean, having kids definitely changes your perspective. It definitely kind of, at least for what I have planned with that story, it's definitely informed it a lot. So
Yeah.
yeah, causes.
I'm curious. Obviously, things like Kickstarter have been so helpful to independent creators such as yourself, even more so during the pandemic. But
Yeah.
I'm curious, when will you like feel comfortable enough to start going to, I guess, comic conventions?
Um, honestly, I'm hoping in the fall. Like something like San Diego. I don't know. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole different beast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like smaller shows like Long Beach or something like that, I would definitely be open to. I'm like really eager to, because, I mean, Kickstarter and online has been great, but it's also been challenging, growing an audience at the same time. Monster Matador, I think, is a book where, and I get this reaction a lot from people, from readers, is that it's a book where it's not what they expect it to be. They're like, oh wow, this isn't like, they're expecting like a Godzilla type of book or whatever,
Yeah.
and it really is. It's really not the standard. I guess it doesn't follow the kaiju, like the typical kaiju kind of story structure, I guess. So it's one of those books where I think where it benefits from being able to get out there and kind of people actually seeing it.
Yeah.
So I'm really eager, and because I've had it in a couple stores here, and with and people, and they've been selling, which is amazing. Without any promotion or anything, people just kind of like, they see Fabio's cover, and then they'll flip through it and the artwork, and they're just like, oh wow, this is this is kind of cool. Um, so I'm eager, I'm hesitant, but these vaccines. I'm going to be fully vaccinated next week, so they seem to be working. And we have to get back to life, right? We have to be smart about it. We have to be safe about it, but we have to kind of start dipping our toes out there. And I think too that I think convention organizers are aware of it, and I think there will be um, they will be rebuilding their conventions and how conventions are kind of done to sort of maximize safety for everybody because no one wants to get sick. So
Yeah, definitely. Um, are there any aspects of your current Kickstarter campaign that you want to highlight?
yeah, we have so Fabio draws digitally, but he did 5 original art pinups for us that are a reward tier. So it's very rare to get any art from Fabio because it is digital. So those are that we only have 3 left, and that's $100 tier, and you get your choice of 3 Monster Matador comics with it. So if you're new to the book, you can get all 3 issues plus an original piece of Fabio's art for $100, which I think is a great deal. We have a very cool glow in the dark print that was printed by Nakatomi Print Labs, which are based out of Austin, Texas. And we have some really cool just variant covers from some artists like Tony Donley and Carlos Diarmas. And we have an add-on store where you can get sketch cards and other original art. So there's something for everybody. And obviously we have a digital option too. And you get prints and stickers thrown in and all types of fun stuff like that.
Nice. The day will come when, I guess, when you say the word Nakatomi, they won't understand what you're talking about.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Yeah. I
The
guess we'll take.
world is changing.
What was
Yeah.
that?
I said the world is changing. It gotten to the point in my life where it's like, yeah, like half the things I've known are like gone, or it's like it's a whole new world.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that Cobra Kai, decided to become a thing because, all those feelings of nostalgia, of my childhood,
Yeah. hmm
I
That's why I
guess,
teach my kids, strike hard, strike fast, no mercy.
right. Um,
Every morning and every night when I put them to sleep.
I guess we'll take a break and do a thunder round, which is our round of random questions. The first question is, um, since you're talking about Three Stooges, I decided to just put this in there. Who's your favorite of the Three Stooges?
I like Curly.
Curly. Why?
Yeah, Curly. I don't know. He's just the funniest to me. Mo is just an asshole. And Larry, I can't deal with the hair. Curly, he's just such a sweet guy, and he just gets picked on by everybody. He's the one, but he's the one that makes me laugh the most. I have the most empathy for him too. So,
Cool.
and
Um,
yeah.
Speaking of hair, how is your COVID hair doing?
Okay, we talked about this. I tried to shave it, and my wife wouldn't help me out with some of the spots that I missed, and this was at the beginning of COVID, so I've got like a really weird hair. I had a really weird hairstyle for a while, and now it's kind of grown out again. So I've got they call it the Jew fro. It's just curly and just big, and it's just frizzy, and I want to get it cut again. I used to have it long, but it's like it's too much work. It's too much work right now.
You used to have it like what, like heavy metal long?
No, 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 no. But like to my shoulders.
Uh huh.
I've tried. It just my hair it just gets like the curls just start bunching up, bunching up, bunching up. I've tried to do like the Kirk Hammett thing. The Metallica guy with
Yeah.
those big, long, but yeah, it didn't work out for me. It's one of my big regrets in life, but
Right.
what
Uh,
can you do?
right. You used to be in the toy industry. Do you have your own toy collection? If so, what are some of your favorites in your collection?
So I used to be in the toy industry. I stay far away from toys because they're like, although I will tell you, every once in a while, I can't help myself. I have, and my favorite thing and the coolest thing, I think it's the coolest toy ever. And I spent way too much money on it. It's this kind of like, I don't know what they call it, 1/6 scale or something. It's, if you know Chow Yun Fat, the movie Better Tomorrow,
Uh huh.
it's an action figure of Chow Yun Fat, that character Mark Gao from A Better Tomorrow, and it's like imported from Hong Kong, and it's like one of those like high end figures, whatever. But it's so cool. It's got like the trench coat, the sunglasses, everything.
Nice.
It's the coolest thing. Yeah.
It's been a while
So
since I watched the Chow Yun Fat movie. Maybe I should go back and start watching them again.
so COVID, I decided like I need to go like do a deep dive into like Hong Kong and like Korean cinema because it had been a while.
Yeah.
Um, and I went a little crazy. I ordered like way too many bits from overseas, from Hong Kong. But yeah, my wife was like, "Do you ever watch anything not in English anymore?" or, in, or that's in English anymore? Because every time she'd come downstairs, be watching a movie, it was in either Chinese or Korean. So, but they're great. I love them. Chow Yun Fat is my favorite actor. He's amazing. I love him.
Do you have any of his movies that you want to recommend besides Better Tomorrow?
Okay, yeah. So there was obviously The Killer and Hard Boiled, are his other two big John Woo movies. There was one I just saw, which was fun. I recommend it because it's on Amazon Prime for free right now. It's called Project Gutenberg,
Mm.
and that was a lot of fun because it's Chow with his he's back to shooting things up again in this one.
Okay.
And there's one I really like called this is an older one. It's really kind of hard to find here, but it's a dramatic role for him, and it's called All About Ah Long, and it's directed by Johnny To, who's another big Hong Kong director, and Chow plays a single dad and with a young son, and his the mother sort of comes back into his life unexpectedly. It's kind of like that movie Kramer versus Kramer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's really really good dramatic role from him. So
Nice. Yeah.
yeah.
The rise in Korean cinema has been like,
Amazing,
yeah.
amazing. Oh my God, so many good movies. So many good movies. I'm like, yeah, don't even get me started because I'll stay here.
I guess we can spend another podcast just talking about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
I'll tell you, if you like horror movies,
uh,
there's one called The Wailing, which came out a few years ago.
okay.
And that one's readily available in the States. I think Fox put it out or something. It's just creepy. Really, really good. Really scary. In
Nice.
like a not like a gore way,
Uh
but
huh.
just like one of
Suspenseful.
those movies that gets under your skin. Like, oh yeah,
Cool. I'll look for it.
yeah.
Um, I'm not saying that you're a Republican, but if you were a monster in the Monster Matador universe, what kind of monster would you be?
Um, that's a good question. I would be a sloth monster.
Sloth monster. Why would you say that?
One, because I would just like hide and sleep in a tree, and that way the matador wouldn't find me and kill me.
Got it. um, if you had the ability to time travel, who is someone that you would want to have a conversation with?
Um, that's a good question. I've never actually thought about that. It's such an interesting question because one, I doubt the person would even want anything to do with me. Uh, but I don't know who would be a good conversationalist. I mean, it would be fascinating. You know who would be fun actually? is Benjamin Franklin.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Everything I've read about him, he just sounds like, you know what I mean? It's people always go, I want to, like I don't know, I like I'm more interested in someone like quirky like that who probably like would think I'm an idiot,
Yeah.
because I think anyone from any other time, regardless of where you time travel, is going to look at you and be like, it because our values and our perspectives and everything are so different. But Ben Franklin seemed like a guy who kind of knew how to have fun and just so full of ideas. You know what I mean? Like you imagine like all the stuff that he invented and came up with, and he had a lot of really good feuds. That's something that like I think the art of the feud has sort of been missing from modern day uh, life. People used to have really cool feuds back in the day. They used to insult each other funny. It's like you are the back of a horse's carriage, or something like that. But if you said that to someone like 200 years ago, that was like, whoa, dude. you know,
So, I mean,
that,
did he
that,
have did he
that,
concerning feuds? Did he have like a feud that's like on the same level as Burr and Hamilton?
there was something I was reading about it the other day, not the other day, and this is why Benjamin Franklin's in my head, but it was probably last week or something. So he like started an almanac and he was feuding with another guy who had an almanac. And then he predicted, like in the almanac, the day of the guy's death. He was just like trolling this guy.
Oh my gosh,
Just he was just like pre-internet like troll.
that's
It's kind
crazy.
of it's kind of interesting when you realize like nothing really changes. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Just kind of like the instruments we use, but it's like people have been, they find like dick pics on walls, like in Roman bathrooms, right? Like it's like thousands of years ago. And it's like, and like I think they like fart jokes and like, Egyptian writing and stuff like that in hieroglyphics. And it's just kind of like, it's crazy, right?
Right.
Like for thousands of years, yeah, humans just, it's all we do is like graffiti and fart jokes, It's,
Yeah, it'd
it's
be
not,
cool.
it's not
It'd be cool
modern
to
phenomenon.
yeah, it'd be cool to find out how Benjamin Franklin really was.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Um,
what's one thing you hated as a child but you love now as an adult?
Oh, you know what? Here's a good one. I was just talking about because Fabio asked me what I thought of Elvis.
Uh huh.
I wouldn't say I hated Elvis, but I didn't really care for Elvis. And I was explaining to him because growing up, Elvis was one like the whenever you saw something of Elvis, it was always like on the National Enquirer or something. It was like Elvis is alive or whatever.
Right.
And it was always like Fat Elvis or whatever, and I was like, who is this guy? Everyone like older people rave about this guy, and then you'd all the Elvis impersonators and whatever, and it was just like a joke, you know what I mean? And then as I got older, I discovered the comeback movie, like was it like the '68 Hawaii whatever when the black suit, and that just got me into him, like, and then I really started listening to music and watching him perform, and you really, it's just like, wow,
Yeah, I think
like he
I think my
was,
parents actually have that album,
yeah,
the
it's
Hawaii.
great. I mean,
Yeah.
he truly was for a moment in time like the king. I mean, it's incredible, but all like that seemed, at least when I was younger, and even today still, all that really seems to be focused on more is like the downfall, the downhill.
Yeah.
It's a really sad story. I mean, the guy was he was taken advantage of by a lot of people, and um, there were no mechanisms for him to cope. But what an incredible performer, man.
Yep.
I mean, just amazing. Yeah. So that's one thing that as a kid I really didn't care for, and
Hmm.
now I'm pro Elvis.
Nice. Um, the last time we had you on, you said you were an improvisational writer. Would you care to elaborate? And how do you stay organized being so improvisational?
I tend to I tend to write a lot of ideas in a notebook, and then I just I never look back on it for some reason.
Uh-huh.
But usually when I start a story, I come up with so every story, you have your three acts, and you have your what they call the inciting incident, which is sort of the end of the first act, beginning of the second act, which is what gets the characters on their way. Then you have a middle point, which kind of adds a little twist to the story, and then you have your what's called kind of like a lost point, or the end of the act, third act, which is where everything seems lost for the character, where they lose the battle and oh my God, it's the end. What are they going to do? And I usually start out with those beats, figuring out what those beats are going to be, and then I'll start writing the story. And I have like very vague ideas. Like for Tango of the Matadors, I had a very vague idea of where the story was going, and but what it is, I start to like fill it out as I'm writing, like with the characters in the fighters that he fights with. Like I knew he was going to have these fighters that he was going to fight with, but I didn't sketch them out beforehand. I kind of wait till like I'm at that page, and then I'll start coming up with them. And then as I'm writing, I'll start building the relationships between them. And somehow it all sort of flows and comes together, and everything connects. I think part of it is when I was younger, I went to a religious school, and they told my parents, don't let him read comics, don't let him watch cartoons, don't. So I didn't really have a lot of like outlets for that stuff. So a lot of it was like in my head. So I would kind of create stories in my head, and I would just kind of let them flow. And as I got older, that kind of like became part of my process for writing. So
I guess if you were a musician, you'd be a jazz musician in a way.
And yeah, it's a lot like jazz. I used to do comedy improv too, so it's just like, it's like comedy improv. It's like things like that. It's just how I kind of, I guess, like how I trained my mind. It's not like something. Sometimes you hear, like, you read these interviews and writers will go, oh, you just do this and this. I mean, there's a reason why I approach it the way I approach it. And it's not like something that, these things. It takes a lot of time and a lot of practice to get it to the point where it's like, you find the groove with it.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And for any writer, you kind of have to do, like, some writers will before they even write a word of the script, they will have like everything planned out. You know what I mean? And that's really, it's a matter of just preference and how you write. Like I've tried that before, and what happens is I always end up writing a completely different story. So for me, it's just kind of like a waste of time. Like you have to work out certain beats and details, and it's not like I'm going in there blind, like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. But it's more just kind of like I let the story like kind of like set its pace. I let the characters kind of just like be themselves for a little bit, rather than kind of like putting them in a box. I'll kind of like give them the freedom to kind of like express themselves, and hopefully that comes out in the story, makes it a little less predictable. Because sometimes the like what happens at the end of issue 2, that just sort of happened. That like that cliffhanger at the end of Tango issue 2.
Oh wow, really?
So sometimes surprises like that. Yeah, it wasn't supposed to be there, and it wasn't. I had a lot of trouble figuring out how that issue was going to end. And I had that kind of like in a different place, but in a different way that wasn't. I don't want to spoil it, which is why I'm kind of being vague here.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was kind of got there, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, this is what has to happen here. You know what I mean?
Oh, and even though your Kickstarter campaign is for issue 3, you do have the other issues available for purchase as well.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, of course. Every Kickstarter we do, you'll be able to catch up on any issue. Yeah. That's the thing. I think I should have had the titles Monster Matador number 1 through 3, but that's sometimes I think people worry like, well, if it's issue number 3, what about 1 and 2? But Yeah, you can get all three issues.
Actually, I stand corrected. It does say Monster Matador and Tango and the Matadors issues 1 through 3 on the
Okay,
Kickstarter campaign.
cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cool. What kind of music would you listen to on a long road trip?
Ooh, that's good. I my taste is so eclectic. I probably like probably a lot of classic rock, hip hop. Uh, it really, I guess sometimes it really depends on where I'm going, right? For a while, for a while, when I was writing when I was kind of coming up with Monster Matador and doing it, I would listen to the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly soundtrack over and over and over and over. It was just it just like set the mood for everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess is there any place that you'd want to go to? I guess once it gets safer to travel.
So I hate traveling. I like I like I like the end point. Like if I travel somewhere, um like I like being in the place I'm traveling to,
Yeah.
but I hate everything before that. So I can't like if you ask, my wife is always like, "Oh, where do you want to go?" I'm like, "I don't want to go anywhere." You know what I mean? Like I never want to go anywhere.
So we'd have to like push you to sleep like they did with B.A. Baracus and the A Team
Yeah,
before.
I don't know why. I don't know why I get so much anxiety before even going to San Diego Comic Con. I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I get so much, and then I'm there and I'm like, oh, I don't want to leave. This is, like it's weird. It's weird, but like, yeah, I can't even discuss where I want to go because I genuinely do not want to go anywhere. But if I'm there, I'm happy to be there. It's really
um,
weird.
you're a seasoned comic book creator now. Any advice for someone who is thinking about creating their very first comic book?
Yeah, just do it. Don't care what anyone. Don't worry about what other people think. You're never gonna get anywhere by not doing anything. Everyone has to start somewhere, and it's really incredible the community that is around to support indie creators. And if you are and honestly, and if your listeners, if you are a creator, if you are an indie creator, if you want to start a comic book, there are so many groups on Facebook and things like that that you can join. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help. You'll find that most creators are, we're all trying to help. We're all happy to help each other out. And this goes back, I think you brought up the Meltdown class. I met Rylan Grant in that class. I met Carla Nappi in that class, who's been on your show. She does Duplicate. I met Tony Fabro in that class, who does 3-panel crimes. And there wouldn't be Monster Matador. I'll be honest, there wouldn't be Monster Matador without Rylan Grant because when I had kids, I think I just finished issue 5 or 6 of the one I was writing and drawing, and things got so crazy that for like 2 years I didn't do anything. And Ryland emailed me out of the blue and was like, "Hey, you want to do this panel at, I think it was LA Con, about making comics or whatever?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I should do it because I haven't made any comics at all in like 2 years. I was kind of done with it." And and then I was like, no, and then I kind of went ahead and agreed to do it, and that kind of got me started back on Matador. And uh, him and Carla and I all read each other's scripts. We all edit each other and are sounding boards for each other. So the point being, if you are thinking about making comics, definitely do it. Definitely find other indie creators that are doing it, and definitely find because comics is hard, and doing this stuff is it's not it's not easy, and it's really important to have a good group of support, and like I said, Fabio is an artist I found through Ryland. And a lot of times, if you're looking for an artist, if you're looking for a colorist, the best way to do it is through recommendations because those people are going to be reliable. So that's my advice, and I'm sticking to it.
Nice. That's great advice. Usually in our superhero shoutouts, I ask our guests to, give us a name of a person or group of people that has helped you along the way, and also to sort of give us any recommendations on any artists, writers, or other creatives that you'd like our audience to check out. But I think you've done that already. Unless there's anybody else you want to sort of add to the list.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, I mean that whole Meltdown crew. Charlie Stickney, who's now with Scout Comics. Charlie's the writer and creator of White Ash, who started on Kickstarter, and now he's a comic book publisher. Incredibly talented, incredibly generous with his time and advice to creators, and great comics that are worth checking out. Dave Pepos, another really great creator who's a friend. He's done the OZ. He has a book out from Aftershock right now called Scout's Honor, which takes place in another post-apocalyptic future, but where people use the Boy Scouts handbook as kind of like their Bible, their constitution. David Schrader, who does Baby Badass, is another good friend. There's so many people.
There are.
I'll probably keep them around forever, but again, you just build those relationships, and we all, we're all kind of, we all help each other out. We all kind of, we all, recommend artists and things to everyone. You'll tend to see sometimes the same names on books, and you'll notice that those people are all kind of like came up together or know each other. I should also mention Don Wynn, who does Pablo the Gorilla.
Yeah.
Don quit his job, his corporate job, to become a comic book creator full time. And he had a very good job, and he's crazy for doing it, but he's done it, and he's doing amazing. And he is really, look him up, Don Wynn, Pablo the Gorilla. He is an inspiration to anyone who wants to make comics. So
yeah,
he's definitely
speaking of Don. Speaking of Don, I love Pablo the Gorilla, but I love Don also because he's such a big signal booster for everybody else's projects.
Don is he's the king. He is such a huge supporter. He lifts everyone up. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
If you ever feel down or bad about your book or how it's going, just reach out to Don and he will lift you up. And he's truly one of those people who just decided like this is what I want to do and put his mind to it. And he puts in the work and the effort day in and day out, and it's great to just watch. Like every time he'll announce a new project or something, you can't help but root for him.
Definitely. It's this whole COVID thing sort of has me wistful for the times before the pandemic because even though I'm down in San Diego, you guys are up in LA. It's not that far, but I used to like driving up there for the comic book events and hanging out with you guys.
Yeah, it's hard because we're all kind of at a point in our lives where it's like we're not going out every night partying, so
right.
So really the conventions. I mean, I'll usually, I used to try to meet Dave Schrader for lunch every couple months. Rylan lives in like the Deep Valley, so it's like in another state. I never see him, so it's like, and obviously like I rarely see you too, it's, that was the nice thing about conventions and having the events was like, you get to see everyone, you get together with everyone. And it's kind of like, we all talk and we're all kind of like, we're in contact with each other, but it's like, it's not the same. Yeah.
Yeah. So fingers crossed that things will,
Yeah.
will hopefully get better sooner than later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we'll start closing out the show. Did we miss anything? Are there any other projects that you're involved with that you'd like our audience to know about?
There was a Nightmare Theater anthology that Fabio and I had a story in. That was run by Clay Adams, another great creator, and Dave Schrader. That was kickstarted back in November, but it's a whole bunch of indie creators doing short horror stories.
Yeah, yeah, we had them on the podcast.
Oh, you had them on? Okay,
yeah.
So So I mean, that's one. And then Fabio and I have another book that we're supposed to be doing at some point. I just, it's weird. Like, with COVID, you think, wow, this is like, when you're not at home every day, your dream is like, man, I want to be home every day, all day, and I'm just going to get so much done and blah, blah, blah. And I feel like I've gotten less done.
Oh, really?
Like I have, well, because I have kids at home. So it's like I have less. So I'm kind of like, I've just been focusing on Monster Matador right now. And, we're wrapping up Tango, the Matadors. We're going to have a new miniseries in October, which is going to have some very, very, very special guest stars. I don't even want to. I don't want to announce anything yet, but it's gonna blow people away.
Nice. I can't wait.
Just gonna leave it out there.
Cool. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. It's been a while, and it's good to hear your voice.
Yeah. It's good to come back and reconnect. Thank you for having me.
Where are the best places online for our audience to connect and follow you?
Well, right now it's Kickstarter, right? But yeah, no, you can find me on Facebook, Monster Matador, Instagram, Monster Matador, Twitter, Monster Matador. Twitter, you can also find me at the Stephen Prince. You can also link to all of those from monstermatador.com. I'm trying to corner the Monster Matador market.
Nice. I think you have it. You're doing a good job of it, I think.
It's tough now because if you do come up with a comic or anything, even your name, like chances are you're not going to be able to get like the website,
Right.
So it's like, yeah, once you have that idea, I got the website for Monster Matador. Can I tell you this? 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Because even though I wasn't doing anything with it, I'm like, if I sit on this, someone's going to grab it.
What was it? Was it available?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. No, it was. And also the Twitter, all that stuff. I got it years ago because I thought, man, even if I don't do anything with this, like someone's going to grab it and then I'm going to want to do something and then I'm not going to have it,
Right. That's good. Good foresight on your part.
Yeah. I got lucky.
Well, thanks again for coming to the show, and hope to see you soon.
Yeah, hope to see you soon.
Cool. Thank you for listening to the Hall H Show podcast, and thanks to our guest, Stephen Prince. Please give him a follow and consider supporting Monster Matador, Tango of the Matadors, issues 1 through 3 on Kickstarter. The campaign ends on May 5th, 2021, and stay up to date by going to monstermatador.com. We love putting the spotlight on independent pop culture creatives. If you have a suggestion for a potential guest, please let us know. If you can also find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, YouTube, Spotify, and our website, hall-h.com. If you believe in our mission to be the voice of independent creators, we would appreciate a rating, hopefully 5 stars, and a comment on Apple Podcasts. And please spread the word on social media using the hashtag HallHShow. Peace, cheers, and stay safe out there.